Hear Yeezy. Welcome to the Kanye Quest. This week we're going to be talking about Kanye's magnum opus, his perhaps most grandiose project yet, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy.
Wait, by the way, this is the Kanye Quest, a weekly show going over Kanye West's entire discography, giving you some of the brief history. Usually we do some form of quest, but we're not doing today because this is too big of a project.
This is seriously like too big and grand of a project that I think it allowed the entire elapsed time to talk about
it. But today we're talking about Kanye West's My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. And we're continuing where we left off after Kanye's last studio album, 808s and Heartbreaks. So after 808s and Heartbreaks, a little while after, he went to the MTV Video Music Awards, and this is when one of Kanye's quintessential Kanye moments happened.
I can't believe it was that long ago.
It feels like forever, actually, but time moves slow. When
you're all alone.
But Kanye West, basically, Cliff Notes version of what happened. Kanye West interrupted Taylor Swift as she was accepting her award for, I think, Best Music Video, and he goes on the stage and Beyonce made one of the best music videos of all time, cutting her off, going on a rant, doing all the typical Kanye stuff we know and love, and this affected his opinion with people in a huge way. I still don't understand why people think this was such a tragic event.
I think this set him apart almost as the villain of music. And I think that I feel like Kanye always had kind of a dark side to him, you know? But I think this is the point where people, the Hurricane Katrina thing, the George Bush doesn't care about black people started that kind of downhill.
Rolling Stones continued it, and then
and here we are crashing into the Beyonce had the best music video of all time thing, and then I think people just really took him as a villain. And up until now, I think he fought it, but this was the moment I think he accepted it, where he was going to be a social villain, or people just weren't going to like him.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I don't think what he did was that bad.
No, I don't think so either.
It's not because we don't like Taylor Swift. I just don't think it's that terrible. It's like I said, not because we don't. We don't like Taylor Swift.
No, we don't.
But I just don't think it's it's a dickish thing to do, but it's not
he didn't shoot her.
Yeah, he didn't shoot her in the face.
Nobody was assassinated here. Nothing happened. And if we're being honest, I think that Beyonce did have a better music.
If we're being honest, it's the fucking MTV Music Video Awards. It's not. It's not fucking the Grammys, and it's not that high of an honor. It's only a high as an honor as you want it to be. And I think a lot of this comes down to Taylor Swift being such an innocent figure at the time, because this is when she was still doing country. That she was maybe kind of not her, but I feel like the media played it up as she was a victim in all this, which I don't think she is, and it made her famous. It literally made her famous. It skyrocketed her and Kanye's career from this moment. I think it benefited both of them. Beyond links. So after this event, Kanye had to cancel his Fame Kills tour with Lady Gaga, because Lady Gaga just didn't want to work with him because of that publicity of it. Which was a shame that tour never got to happen.
That's stupid.
He took a break from music to focus on fashion for a bit, and then he locked himself away in Hawaii for a couple months to work on his newest studio album, the most grandest studio album, and in my opinion, his best album. I think this is the best Kanye album. Thinking about it over the last couple days, I didn't know if I was going to be able to put a Graduation or a College Dropout, but I think I am. I think this is his best. I think he comes through. Up until now. For sure. But we haven't gone over Yeezus yet. Yeezus not fucking that. But I think this is his best because it is so big. It's so grand. It's an evolution of Graduation, the same way Late Registration was an evolution of College Dropout, if that makes sense. because it's Graduation on a much larger scale. Graduation was so much more oomph. He took the persona that he crafted on Graduation, and he had to ditch it for a bit because of more like personal reasons. On 808s and Heartbreaks, he was more personal on that and more grounded. But on this, he's back to like Kanye form. He's back on the mountaintop saying, "You can't tell me nothing." He's gone full Kanye, full braggadocio, full just the persona we loved on Graduation. But he has bigger accompaniment behind him. He's making more of these I feel like stadium bangers again, and they're not as electronic, or I would say as rock focused as the ones on Graduation or sample focused, I mean. But there's something new, there's something grand, they're huge. But he also finds way to make what he did on 808s and Heartbreaks. He uses minimalism on it as well to create these huge worlds on the track Say You Will on 808s and Heartbreaks. It feels so grand and so big, but there isn't much that's there. There's a drum and like a synth. That's it. There's nothing else, but it feels like it's this huge atmospheric thing. And the same thing could be played, say, on a track Runaway. Runaway is keys, a sample.
It's just playing octaves too. It's not even like creative piano work or anything.
But it feels so huge. It feels like another dimension. It feels like there's just so much space to it. Like it needs to be played in like a fucking like amphitheater or something like that. It needs to be played on a huge stage. There's so much depth to it. I think this entire album just feels so grandiose, so much fun, but at the same time so large. And he's taking the persona that he did on Graduation. He's taking a lot of the fun lines and a lot of fun moments we had on Graduation and applying it to this project, but also applying a lot of some of the minimalism that he learns on 808s and some of the stuff he learned on College Dropout and some of the stuff.
Yeah, I feel like
I think it's more
instead of like sampling soul, I think he's making his own soul music.
Yeah,
he's making his own samples, if that makes sense.
I think it's just a well-crafted Kanye album. We can go over what makes this great. Opening track, Dark Fantasy. Ooh. One of Kanye's best songs.
That's one of my favorites personally.
Can we get much higher?
It's so catchy. It's so fun.
The intro with Nicki Minaj, reading almost like this child's storybook, going on to Kanye with some of the like most fun, most witty bars that he's dropped over his entire career, over this very large, big beat. I think it works really, really well. The choir behind him backing it up, the huge catchy vocals that the choir gives. It's fantastic. That moving on to Gorgeous with Kid Cudi, who Kid Cudi's playing guitar.
I don't know who wins anymore.
It's Lil Wayne.
Lil Wayne or
Kid Cudi. But I think it does feel large and grand on the same note. I like Raekwon's The Chef's performance on it. There's it's the element of there's
the bus boy,
not to be confused with Raekwon the bus boy of Kaliush's Collaborator fame. But I think there's just so many. There's a lot of features to this project, but they're all quality.
So many features,
but they're all quality. I feel like
they're so they're very like handpicked to be exactly what he wants them to be, which I think is awesome. And he's not just pulling from, just kind of his own, like, producer pool, because obviously he does work with, like, Raekwon or Pusha T or Rick Ross or Big Sean, but he's also pulling from people like Elton John or Santa Gold or Justin Vernon from Bon Iver,
Yeah.
As well as getting people like Q-Tip or DJ Premier or Pete Rock or Madlib to, like, work with him and produce. And sometimes he didn't even, like, use their beats, sometimes he like completely discarded the things that they made for him because they just weren't right. That's how much like time and effort was put into this. I just think that's crazy.
Yeah. I feel like all the features on this are kind of similar to what we've been saying about how Kanye uses people almost as instruments. What he did to Adam Levine on Heard Him Say, and what he did to Chris Martin on Homecoming, just kind of turning them into his own use. He's good at finding people's uses and using them for a specific purpose, and I feel like on this album it's the best use of it. I feel like everyone has a great, like, I feel Nicki Minaj on this project I usually don't care for her, but on this she feels hungry, she feels feisty, she feels like on the track Monster, she seems like a fucking monster. She's hungry as fuck.
Get her some food.
Get her a fucking granola bar stat, boy.
Kanye hired 2 chefs for his mansion. Did you know that? One's for hot food and one's for cold food.
Ice cream? Do they just have to put things in a freezer?
Like, Monsieur West, your dinner. And the other was like, I got ice cream.
But I think a best example on this is all the lights with like all the features that are on it.
All of the features.
Everyone from like Kid Cudi to like
Your
Rihanna to Fergie, who has a surprise part on the bridge, which I've always been confused by, that Fergie's always in that one little spot. But there's just so many. I think like John Legend's a part of the choir as well. There's so many background vocals that ensemble. We are the world. We are the world, but Kanye version. He makes people like Rick Ross work. And have him on the Bon Iver on the same track.
Rick Ross will work for anybody.
The fact that like Rick Ross and Bon Iver on like the same track is like crazy. Like how he's able to put so many like different artists with different styles and different flows on like the same level. Blame Game with John Legend reminds me a lot of why the collaboration between him and Kanye on I'm Good works so well. Just I think John Legend's voice and the piano ballad that follows him and Kanye just is very soothing, and it's one of the better moments on the closing of this album. There's just so many great moments. Power is one of Kanye's best ballads. It is one of his best songs. It's just one of his best performances too. It's so hype. It's so energetic. The sampling with 21st Century Schizo Man, the huge choir that shows up, the choir like vocals that show up on a lot of the tracks on the album. It just has a huge grand factor to it. Kanye's hungry as fuck. I would say a lot of these tracks Kanye is also hungry as fuck. There's a lot. I think this is almost like a redemption for him in a sense. He wanted to redeem himself, not after Taylor Swift, but he wanted to make sure people knew he was still the fucking best, because 808s in a sense wasn't his most well accepted project. We talked it's one of those most underrated, and Graduation
also not well accepted either.
I think Graduation was well accepted.
It was better accepted than 808s, but coming off of like Late Registration and the College Dropout, it's completely like flipped it on its head. It wasn't the same thing. Yeah, but it was noteworthy as one of the markers in the end of the Bling era. Yeah. And for the culture, it meant a lot. For Kanye's career, it meant a lot. But at the time, for his fans, like, I don't think that they liked it very much. And going to 808s, it's such a different sound and just such a different style that I think he needed this project to show people he was on the fucking top. He was on his A game. This Graduation sound could be even more than I did on his last album. This minimalism, I can even mess with that a bit, and it's even more. I think that Kanye is just his hungriest, his most passionate, and his most, like, is just best on this album. And that's why there's 2 chefs. All the lights... the interlude with the interlude going to the actual performance is so beautiful. All the vocals on it, again, just the sense of grandeur on this project. When I think of My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, I think of Kanye wearing that giant ass fucking chain, and I think that status of wealth, I always compliment, or I always compare that to the grandness of this album. I feel like Kanye deserves that chain. That chain complements this album in a sense. It needs to be ridiculously grand. It needs to be kind of almost ridiculously dumb. Case in point, in Dark Fantasy, you got too many miracles on your team. That's why you Winslow. Just out of here. Just so many elements thrown together. Who Will Survive in America and See Me Now, Lost in the World and Who Will Survive in America at the end. Just a great closing statement, really energetic, really fun. I think a lot of people don't care for that moment as much, but I personally love those two as a closer. I think it's just so much fun. I think the production behind it, I love Bon Iver with Kanye. I love the choir that backs them both up. I love how just the production, all the stylistic choices, all the sampling. I like how it goes in the preacher at the end, or the motivational speaker, I forget who it is, but I think everything just kind of goes together. Hell of a Life is one of Kanye's most tongue-in-cheek and also one of his most fun
tracks where he's talking about a marry porn star and just all the dumb things that he's gonna do, and it has this like illusion of grandeur, his illusion of like almost stupidity of being a jackass, but at the same time he's self-aware that he's just being dumb. I think it works out really well. I think this album just works as a group to create this sense of grandeur, the sense of a large world. Yeah, it's one of the best hip-hop albums of all time, nonetheless. This is Kanye's best album. I think it's great. I think it's phenomenal. I love this album to death. Re-listening it over the past week has been fantastic, and I can't wait to listen to it more times. Tracks like Dark Fantasy, Runaways with Pusha T, which we didn't really get a chance to talk about all that much, but it's minimalistic and it's fantastic. And then one of my personal Kanye bracket, I think it's utterly great with his minimalism and vocals. Tracks like Hell of Life, Blame Game, All of the Lights, Monster, Power, Who Will Survive in America. It's just everything just blends well together, and that's why I think it's Kanye's best album.
This album feels like it was made, I know you said it was made to show everybody he was the best, which I think to an extent that is true, but I also think it was made just for himself. You know, this was Kanye locked in his own head, and as I mentioned before, like he would throw out tracks that were, you know, produced for him. He would throw out features. He would, you know, tell people no. This was an album like for him, and I think he was just like too locked in his head to say no, or too locked in his head to not have things go exactly the way he wanted it to. And I think that really paid off. I'm glad that this happened. I hate that it had to have happened, because I think that it was in a time of a lot of like suffering for him. It just seemed like it came at a really bad time for him. I just found out like the other day that the original name for this album was Donda's Boy.
Yeah. And then the other name was Good Ass Job.
Yeah,
too.
With Chance 3.
Yeah.
But like, just take that name, you know, Donda's Boy. Yeah. His mom just died.
Yeah, before 808s.
Mm-hmm. And he talked about it on 808s, but this is almost like the 808s is not a sense of closure.
Yeah.
I think that this is a huge sense of closure for him, a huge new opening of his next chapter. When I think of this, I think of the gates of like Olympus or heaven have just opened, and Kanye's like stepping into a whole like grandiose world. You got like the choirs of angels singing. You've got these huge images of like architecture, just huge like Greek architecture, you know, crazy elaborate sounds linked to like crazy elaborate images. Dark Twisted Fantasy, I think, is just Kanye trapped in his own mind and just trying to make sense of the world around him. And I loved every minute of it. I think this album is a true masterpiece, and anybody that says otherwise is kind of, I think they're kidding themselves.
One final note I want to go out on. The reason I think this is a final note why I think it's the best album. College Dropout and Late Registration, which are often praised as Kanye's best albums, I think they didn't have really a sense of super uniqueness production-wise. And I think Kanye as a presence was unique, but I'm not saying it's bad from that, but I think it wasn't like something completely unthought of, if that makes sense. It was a good collection. It's a great collection of tracks, don't get me wrong, but it's not something super out there compared to the time. I think this at the time is almost, it was a sound that really hasn't, this grand hip hop is something that never was really accomplished before, and Kanye was able to do it. And I think that's why My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy is good, because it gave Kanye, as you mentioned, a sense of closure. It showed him at the mountaintop. He was able, it's almost I think this is the opening to the second half of his career, the second act, and it's just, yeah, it's phenomenal. I don't think I could say any more. I think the current ranking of albums we already viewed, I think My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, Graduation, College Dropout, 808s and Heartbreaks, Late Registration. It's gonna come to my head in a second. Can't Tell Me Nothing. I'm good. Get well soon. I always forget the mixtapes. I remember all of them. But I think, I don't think I have anything else to say. This is the best Kanye album. If you've never heard it before, definitely check it out.
For sure.